Uh, Hello, folks. We're running a little late, and we have a hard 7 o'clock finish time. So let me do some housekeeping while we're just finalizing the computer and some stuff. My name is Ben Sidran. Oh, I've written it out so I don't make a mistake. I'm a musician, a writer, and a person very interested in today's topic. And thank you to everyone for coming to this Wisconsin Book Festival event to see Dan Levitin for his book, I Hear There Was a Secret Chord. We want to thank the Madison Public Library, Madison Public Library Foundation, and all of the sponsors for helping make this incredible celebration possible. Please silence your cell phones for the obvious reasons. And just a reminder, Lake City Books will be selling books after the conversation just outside the DeLuca Forum. And I suppose that's where we are. And Dan will be pleased to sign your book. Right now, oh, here he is too. I'm pleased to welcome Dan Levitin, James McGill Professor Emeritus of Psychology and Neuroscience. How do you do?
How do you do?
Here, you want to put that on? Yep, there you go. I think it's working. Tap it.
Hello?
You're on. Okay. Founding Dean of Minerva University in San Francisco. His research addresses fundamental questions in auditory memory, musical structure, and the neuroanatomy and neurochemistry of musical.
It's easy for you to say.
Yeah. And he's really a hip guy, too, on top of everything else. He's the author of 6 consecutive international best-selling books. The first one, This Is Your Brain on Music, completely blew me away and is still one of the great books about music and neuroscience. The other ones, The World in 6 Songs, The Organized Mind, Successful Aging, A Field Guide to Lies, and this is his newest one, I Heard There Was a Secret Chord. He's also a musician. He plays multiple instruments. He's consulted on numerous recordings and has been awarded 17 gold and platinum records. I should note that these are not really made out of gold or platinum, but they look nice on the wall.
Spray paint them.
They spray paint them.
That's right, yeah.
So be impressed, but
not that impressed.
Not that impressed.
Yeah.
And now to the book. I hear, forgive me, I heard there was a secret chord, and the title of the book, the last page of the book, you reveal why you named it that. It's worth it, the previous pages. He tells you why he named it that, explains how and why music has a healing function, how it can improve and prolong life. It presents numerous facts and studies that illuminate our historical past and our rather confused present. More than that, it is written, as are all his previous bestsellers, in a very user-friendly way, giving you access to all the science, but the ability to simply follow a clear narrative if you're only in it for the story. That's my take on it.
That's lovely. Thank you.
Yeah. And I have a very personal connection to the subject of this book, Dan, as you might remember, since the moment when, while in college, when I was a college student, I was listening to a John Coltrane record, and I thought I heard my mother's voice. And ever since then, I have been driven by a need to know how music can be like speech and what, in fact, could it possibly be telling us. And this really is the first book to go right to the heart of that question. So thank you, first of all, for being here, but second of all, for writing this book.
I couldn't be more delighted that you are here with me. I've admired you for decades, and we became friends along the way, and it's just, this is such a wonderful experience for me to be able to talk with you in this forum and to have all of you here helping us to facilitate the conversation. Thank you for welcoming me here, and
Thank you. So the format is we're going to talk for a half hour, Dan and myself, and then we'll do Q&A. And we'll interrupt the conversation a couple times for some music.
If you like.
Yeah. And, well, let's start with the broad strokes. Tell us how music makes us human.
What a great question. We didn't plan this, by the way.
No rehearsal, that's the other thing.
Music is a uniquely human activity, and skeptics might say, well, there's bird song and there's whale song, but any biologist will tell you those are not functioning the way music functions for us. So one of the things that characterizes human music is we'll play when there's nobody listening. Birds and whales don't do that. They do it for signaling purposes. It's like their communication. It's like what language is for us. We'll play around with the melody, theme and variations. We'll experiment. We'll write new ones. Birds and whales don't do that. Their songs are hardwired into their brains genetically. So there's an exploratory aspect to human music. There's a self-gratification aspect, as well as all the other things. We do use it for signaling other people. We use it to communicate our emotions when words won't do, whether it's making a mixtape for somebody or singing a song to your infant that you just made up on the spot, or your infant singing it back to you. Infants go through a period of musical babbling that precedes their period of speech babbling. So we are very much a musical species. And the answer to why it makes us human is that I think that music, uniquely among the arts, for one thing, it's the only art form that causes your body to wiggle in response to it and make you want to move. And for another, it's an art form that can so easily lull you into an altered state of consciousness that neuroscientists call the default mode. And my lab played a very small part of the story of the default mode, which is we discovered where the switch is that gets you in and out of this mode of consciousness. Not that it helps you to understand any better by me putting a weird name on it, but it's in a part of the brain called the insula, and insular cortex acts as a switch between this daydreaming kind of almost trance-like mode and the rest of the time when you're controlling your thoughts. And it's through that act of being able to enter an altered state of consciousness that music can take us on these journeys and ultimately allow us to see the world differently. Through music, through art in general, we can see the world through other people's eyes, through other people's experience. We can experience other lives that are not our own, ideas that were not our own. And it's only through the act of imagining a different world, a better one, that we can create a better world.
You talk at length about the default mode, and you actually say something to the effect that without this ability to go into this space, not just at rare moments, but ongoing, we would not be the creative, innovative animals that we are. It is this back and forth.
And it's the problem-solving mode. It's you walking down the cereal aisle at the store looking for the right kind of Cheerios, now that there's like 6 of them. And as you're looking for the right Cheerios, the solution to some problem that had been dogging you suddenly pops in your mind. That was the default mode, churning it over, what we used to call the subconscious. That's what's happening there.
The other thing that stuck out to me about music making us human, because we are such social animals, is the extent, well, first of all, you flat out say that music preceded speech, which I love. I've always suspected that.
I think what I flat out say is the weight of evidence.
Yes, okay.
Music,
okay.
Yeah. In my interpretation of
your
it,
interpretation.
because Steven Pinker disagrees.
Oh, well, he can disagree if he likes.
Yes.
The idea that we have the ability to entrain through music. Correct me if I'm wrong. Collective entrainment, examples would be you see a flock of birds and they fly and they're all going, how do they know where they're going? They know. Or fish in a school of fish. But humans are the only animals that can be entrained by rhythm.
At a fish concert, for example.
For example, at a fish
Or a
concert.
flock of seagulls concert.
Either way.
Or the birds.
Or with the birds.
Yeah.
But that's a very interesting
Yeah,
detail.
so there are these direct connections between your inner ear and the movement centers of your body. And they're related to the so-called startle reflex. You have to be able to get out of the way if there's a sudden loud sound. You have to be able to move without taking your time to think, well, what was that? Should I get out of the way? How big? No, you've been run over by a lion or something at that point, or an avalanche. So this startle reflex is connected to the ability of music to make us move spontaneously without our trying to do it. It's that music has direct connections to motor centers in regions of the brain that we call the cerebellum, the basal ganglia, and also to planning centers for movement. So the entrainment means simply that you've got populations of neurons that fire in synchrony with the tempo of the music. And our lab showed that when people listen to the same piece of music, their brain waves literally synchronize. I mean, if you hear somebody say at a concert, hey, we're on the same brain wavelength, man, that's really true. It's literally true.
Yeah. Well, and humans are the only animals that can clap on 2 and 4.
Right.
Am I right?
No, it's true.
Yeah.
Monkeys are not good at, monkeys will bang on things and they'll make noise, but they can't synchronize. Now, there's some early and still somewhat ambiguous evidence about a sulfur-crested cockatoo that appears to be able to.
Yes, I see. I've seen the video.
But it's not across a whole range of tempi. And the reason that it's a little bit ambiguous is that in the early days, the cockatoo could only do it if it could see its owner. And so there was a visual synchrony
Maybe
component.
something's going on there.
Yeah, Snowball is the bird.
Snowball the bird.
And they had Snowball dancing to, I think it was One Direction.
Oh, was it?
Yeah. But I mean, it really should have been in sync.
It should have been
Band in sync.
Yeah. That's terrible.
It's terrible. A lost opportunity.
So 40,000 years ago, 50,000 years ago, we're in a cave in Lascaux, France, and the fires are burning, and the people, they have musical instruments there. They find flutes on the floor, the rhythm instruments. And the supposition is that through music, through rhythm, there's some kind of social bonding, and that social bonding is perhaps connected to our spiritual sense, perhaps connected to our sense of politics.
Very much so. So, I mean, part of it is that brain waves are being synchronized, and we don't really know what that means. At this point, it's just sort of, hey, isn't that neat? But we don't know what it means behaviorally. But what we do know is that when people listen to music together, and even more so when they play together, oxytocin levels are increased in the brain. And oxytocin is a neurochemical that travels to certain brain regions and unlocks circuits that promote feelings of belonging and increased trust and feelings of bonding. And so I do want to be clear, especially with this audience, oxytocin does not create feelings of bonding. It's a neurochemical that travels to synapses and it opens up like a key in a lock and allows them to do their job. And what's lost in a lot of talk about neurochemistry is that it's not that dopamine helps you pay attention or that oxytocin helps you feel bonded or that cortisol helps you to feel stressed and makes you feel stressed. It's that these brain circuits developed over evolutionary timescales different neurochemical messengers that would unlock them. If you were to design the circuit now, there might just be 4 neurochemicals: excitatory and inhibitory, fast and slow. Because some things you want to last for a long time, some like sleep. Some things you want to be short, like fight or flight. But we don't have more than we have 100 neurochemicals, but that's just sort of an accident of evolution. So I'm mentioning this because the press are often sloppy about this. Oxytocin is the love drug. Well, no, not really. It just happens to unlock these circuits because that's how it worked out.
So you have a guitar here, and we'd like you to perform for us. But before you do, would you integrate your performance into the discussion of neuroscience?
I will, because for the longest time, I started writing songs when I was 18, and I had a job, as you may remember, working for Narada Michael Walden in his songwriting pit with great songwriters like, Randy Jackson and Walter Asanafiev and Preston Glass. And I was writing very deliberately and mentally because all of us were trying to get songs on like the next Whitney Houston record or something. And I was terrible at it. And somewhere around the age of 50, I started spending more time with Joni Mitchell and with Rodney Crowell, who are two songwriting favorites of mine. And although they are very cerebral in their approach, that's not how they write, it's how they edit. And they told me to just engage in a little more stream of consciousness in my writing, to unlock that default mode. And then go back over it and make sure that you're using your craft later, but not to lead with the craft. And once I started doing that, it changed everything about the songs for me, and it made them feel more like they were a real reflection of what I was feeling, not just a grab for cash, which is what
You could be feeling that as well.
Yeah, no, they became more authentic, and so this was a song that came out of that. It came out of reading the Dalai Lama and his thoughts about gratitude, and it came out of thinking about prayer, which is something you and I have spoken about. The interesting thing about prayer is, of course, is that we pray and we don't really know if we're being heard, and we don't really expect to get an answer, and yet we keep doing it. And so the song is about that. There is delight in singing, though none hears. Beside the singer, there is delight, there is delight. There is delight in praising, though the praiser sits alone, and though the praised far off from him, there is delight. All that came before us is just light, and so despite the pleas and pleasantries, we take the night. Warmer climes give brighter plumage, softer winds the breeze of alpine heights. You spread your wings and find what's right. The siren sings, the ship's at sea, though none hears. Beside the mast, there is delight, there is delight. There is delight in facing life, delight in cursing death, and though the body is at sea, there is delight. All that came before us is just light, and so despite the pleas and pleasantries, we forge the night. Warmer climes give brighter plumage, softer winds, the breeze of alpine heights, tender strings to find what's right. There is delight in calling out your name, though you're not here beside the singer. There is delight, there is delight. There is delight in ties that bind, light in knowing we are one, and though we are lost, there is delight. All that came before us is just light, and so despite your pleas and pleasantries, we forge the night. Warmer climes give brighter plumage, stronger winds the breeze of alpine heights. You play the strings to find what's right. You play the strings to find what's right. Play the strings to find what's right.
Beautiful. Beautiful.
Thank you.
So, you've obviously put in your time playing guitar, and I know you've put in your time playing other instruments as well, saxophone and keyboards.
We played saxophone together at one point.
We
Well,
did.
I mean, I played.
You
yeah.
played with me.
Yeah.
And so it has occurred to me over the years that anybody who really wants to master an instrument has to put in a lot of time. And I particularly have this image of a saxophone player, and he's playing 6 hours a day through a brass
I did
tube.
that. Yeah.
And you know, you could do that every day for 20 years, and at the end of those 20 years, the horn will not be changed at all, but you will be totally transformed. That when we work on music, we're really transforming ourselves. Although we say we're working on the piano, we say we're working on the saxophone, we're really working on ourselves. And your book clearly suggests that that's not just the case with playing the music, but listening to the music.
Yes.
How are we changed by listening to music?
Well, so from a neuroscientist's standpoint, every time you experience something new, if you stub your toe today as opposed to yesterday, if you have a new, you taste a new flavor, you have a new conversation, all of that lays down a trace in your brain and it creates new neural pathways. That's what we call learning. Experience, learning, it's new neural pathways. You may have heard that you no longer grow no neural pathways after a certain point in time. That's a myth. You may have learned that you don't grow new neurons after a certain age. That's also a myth. And the place that you continue to grow them most robustly throughout the lifespan is in the hippocampus, the part of the brain that's responsible for memory and learning. And so listening to music, we now believe that every time you hear a song, one thing that it does is it activates any memories you have of other times you heard that song or songs like it, and it lays down its own distinct trace, and it's building up all this neural capacity, cognitive reserve, especially when you start listening to new pieces or new versions of old pieces that you knew. I did a call-in radio show on NPR a couple of days ago, and somebody was saying that he listened to Bernstein's Beethoven's Seventh, and he'd been listening to it for 40 years. It's his favorite version of it. He loves Beethoven's Seventh, and he wanted to know if it was good for his brain. And I said, well, yeah, it is, but you should listen to Stokowski and to Herbert von Karajan and to Kent Nagano. And I mean, that will build up much more robust neural pathways. And the reason you want to do that is because all this cognitive reserve can help mask the onset of Alzheimer's or dementia. It can't reverse it, but excess brain capacity through learning new things, through building up all this cognitive reserve, is neuroprotective. And playing music even more so. You're never too old to learn. You are never too old to learn an instrument. And if you already play an instrument, learn a new repertoire, learn a new instrument. Even if my grandmother, who was born in Germany, we were talking about her earlier, she immigrated to the United States in 1939. And around the time of her 80th birthday, my mother and I found out, she told us that every morning she woke up so grateful that the United States took her in, because most of the rest of her family were lost. She sang every morning, God Bless America, a song written by another Jewish American immigrant.
Israel Baleen,
Yes.
also known as Irving Berlin.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so my mother and I went to the mall and got her a little keyboard, Radio Shack keyboard, and I put pieces of masking tape on it with numbers so she could blink out 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And by the time she was 81, she had lifted up the tape because she had memorized it. She'd never played an instrument before in her life. By the time she was 82, she'd worked out a rudimentary left-hand harmony. And it gave her a sense of agency and delight and a feeling that she could express her gratitude more fully. She played that piano every morning until she died at 97. It is never too late to learn. She was pretty good, too.
Yeah. You say, and I found it very interesting, there's not a place in the brain that's a music center, that music exists as part, the brain itself is the source of music. Does that tell us anything about emotion in general, where emotion lives in the brain or how it lives in the brain?
You know, 20 years ago, we talked about all this like there were maps in the brain. And math is here, and mentally practicing your tennis serve is over here. And, you know, I actually, my advisor, Mike Posner, who was one of the first neuroimagers, he and I derisively referred to it as neurocartography. It's just a bunch of map making. And the current thinking now is that, no, it doesn't really happen in one place. These are massively distributed, spatially distributed circuits. And you can identify some computational centers in certain parts of the brain that are critical. But it's really spread out. And you talk about emotion, we now have a much more nuanced understanding of how emotion happens in the brain. There is a well-known reward circuit that includes structures like the amygdala and the ventral tegmental area, the nucleus accumbens. And this is the part of the brain that when you eat when you're hungry, or you take a drug of addiction when you're addicted to it, you have a drink when you're thirsty, you have sexual pleasure. This part of the brain is what modulates levels of dopamine and endogenous opioids, internal opioids, that signal, in the case of dopamine, hey, this was good, you should try to get more of that. Dopamine motivates you to seek a reward. Think of dopamine as the wagging of the dog tail before the walk, and the opioids is the walk itself, the consumption of that reward. But there are also now connections that we found between the cerebellum, which we used to think was just for movement, and the frontal lobes having to do with emotional regulation. And so it's very complicated. But music doesn't always activate emotion. It can be emotionally neutral, meditation music, chant, or it can be very emotional. It can be people report some of those emotional experiences of their lives where either when music was playing or when they were playing music, or even in a movie, the most emotional scenes, you know, think of Psycho, you know, Hitchcock, that without the music it doesn't work.
String thing, yeah.
Bernard Herrmann, yeah.
So time is charging at us. I just want to quote you, misquote you. You say in the book that music is useful for movement disorders like Parkinson's, eating disorders, depression, substance abuse, pain relief, help managing the neuropsychiatric symptoms of dementia by fostering neuroplasticity, nurturing neural networks, et cetera, et cetera. You have brought a video.
It sounds almost impossible that music could do all these things, right? It sounds like a snake oil salesman telling you this one thing will cure it all. But the thing to understand, and that's what the book is about, that's what the book explores, is that it's different aspects of music and different kinds of music that are doing these different things. So you wouldn't say that there's one pill that cures all diseases. We've got antibiotics, we've got antivirals, we've got antidepressants. And so think of music as a bunch of different special purpose things. In the case of Parkinson's, which is caused by degradation to the circuits that control smooth, continuous movement in a region called basal ganglia. Parkinson's patients often are unable to walk. They either freeze or they begin to walk and then they freeze, or they start to walk and they end up running. It's because the brain's internal clock that would time and regulate these movements precisely is damaged. But if we play music that has the same tempo as the natural walking gait, after about 15 seconds, we were talking about entrainment earlier, these entire populations of neurons that are not damaged start firing in synchrony with the beat, and they actually function as an external timekeeper for the walking. And if you'd show this video of the Parkinsons, you'll see a man who is having trouble walking with a walker. He listens to music. I think we have sound there, although we didn't test it. There should be sound. There's not sound yet. Now he's getting the beat.
Two.
Now in a minute, he's going to lose the walker. She's still holding on to him so he won't fall, but he doesn't need the walker. And with therapy like this for just 4 or 5 weeks, the effects can last for 6 months and you don't need the music at all. You're retraining new circuits to supplement the ones that were damaged. And it's like he's dancing, isn't it? Isn't that something?
Fantastic. Yeah.
And it's a similar thing that goes on when people experience brain damage from stroke or a lesion or a tumor. You lose the ability to speak, as Gabrielle Giffords did. And she used a technique called melodic intonation therapy, which basically does the same kind of thing where you're taking circuits that are preserved, in this case singing circuits, and rewiring the brain to speak based on learning to sing first. That's what she did. She learned to think. She could not talk, but she could say things like, she could sing, "I need a glass of water, show me to the bathroom," you know, this kind of thing. And within a year or so, she was speaking. We have a video of this. This is my colleague Bob Knight at UC Berkeley interviewing a professor who had a stroke and couldn't.
No, I have near.
Not nearby.
Not nearby.
Yeah.
Not nearby.
Yeah.
So you must have been. Let's just do. Let's try Happy Birthday. Okay, ready? With me. Ready?
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Stephen.
He's one of your research subjects. He can sing, right?
Yeah.
She. This is an old. He basically can sing, and he has now
melodies.
say the words.
No, that chance. Happy
Say.
birthday to.
There's your signature patient.
Yeah.
Isn't that amazing?
It's the Tony Bennett.
Yeah.
Those of you who haven't seen it, it's very interesting. There's a documentary about Tony Bennett who is suffering from dementia and is practically catatonic, but when he starts singing songs, he remembers the lyrics and the melody of thousands of songs.
Yeah.
It's very dramatic. We should open it up for some questions because as I say,
We're running out of time.
we're running out of time. They're going to tell us to stop at 7 o'clock.
To get the Bo Peep hook.
Yep. So we have a microphone here to assist everybody to hear it. Here is the microphone. Who might have a question for Dan? Well, we have somebody. Oh, you'll be next.
Thank you. Thanks so much for the conversation. I'm just curious what is known about the extent to which harmony and tonal systems are innate in humans.
We know quite a bit about that because intrepid cognitive neuroscientists have gone to all funny little corners of the earth where with no Western influence. Tonality and harmony are not really, I mean, every culture develops its own musical system. There are some commonalities. Every musical system we know of has the octave. An octave is this. I don't know how to do it without. We recognize in all musical cultures that those are in some sense the same note, but one is higher than the other. And then different cultures divide that octave up into different numbers of intervals. We tend to use 12. Others have 24 or 7 or 5. The 5 note is the most common. We call it the pentatonic. One, two, three, four, 5, and then it starts over again. So major and minor are not universals. Not all cultures have them. We tend to think of minor as sad, but that's entirely culturally learned. Klezmer music is almost all minor, and that's joyful. So it's just as every culture develops its own language, they develop their own music, and it doesn't mean that if you can speak one, you can automatically speak the other.
We have a question here. In there, yeah.
So I have trouble paying attention, and
I'm sorry, what?
I have trouble paying attention. And I also love music, but I find that most music that I love, like classical music or folk music, doesn't help me pay attention. What helps me pay attention is things that I don't even consider music, that I can listen to on YouTube, that are nothing but repetitive chord progressions with some kind of percussion.
Like EDM music or trance music.
I don't know. I don't even know what you would call it. But I'm curious if you can tell me what's happening neurologically
Yes.
and why I can pay attention with that and I
Yes.
can't pay attention with other
For
music.
the same reason that people with attention deficit disorder can calm down when they take a stimulant, listening to certain kinds of music allow your neurons, for somebody, I don't know that you have attention deficit disorder, but people who have trouble paying attention, their brains are kind of scattered, and so it gives that chatty part of their brain something to lock onto and calm it. But not all music will do that. Some music is absorbing, some music is, it's an interesting parallel. Long-distance truck drivers often will listen to music in order to help stay awake, but the choice of music there is critical. If the music is too engaging, they're going to get into a trance and won't see a hazard in the road. If it's too soothing, they'll fall asleep. So they have to hit the Goldilocks zone, and that's what you've discovered for yourself.
Nice.
By the way, thank you to Steve here for doing the video and the audio.
Yeah.
I was just wondering if you have any musical routines that you've integrated into your daily life as an attempt to improve your well-being.
I do. So the big thing was that and I write about this in the book, during the pandemic, I decided to become more emotionally engaged with the piano. And I selected a few pieces that I knew I could get my fingers on so I wouldn't have to get into my real deliberate left brain. Oh, I've got to learn to twist my fingers this way or stretch or do all these weird moves. And I decided I wanted to explore the emotion in them. And I've been doing this now every day that I'm near a piano. I'll play these 3 pieces. They're the Moonlight Sonata, Beethoven's Pathetique, and the Chopin Prelude in E minor. And every day I try to discover some new story or new emotion in them. And I find it is so healthful. It's like a meditation for me. And it took about 3 years, and you'll totally relate to this, but at around the 3-year mark, I stopped playing the piano and it started playing me. Mm-hmm. And that's just wonderful when that happens.
Yep. Exactly. That's what I was saying before. In the end, we're working on ourselves, not the instrument.
Exactly right.
Yeah.
And I feel like I'm getting closer and closer to playing the music, not the notes.
Right. Right.
Yeah. Up here, Steve? Nope.
Well, he's got some on there.
Yeah, I think I got it. Yeah, thanks so much. I've had a curiosity for a long time. You can a group of people can listen to the same music. Say we're at a concert, but some folks are clapping on the 1 and the 3. And some people are clapping on the 2 and the 4.
Yeah.
Right? And I'm wondering what in the heck is going on? The other part of the question is, why can some people find the rhythm and the love supreme and others can't?
Yeah. So what?
I like that second part, the
Yeah.
rhythm of love supreme.
Yeah. Take a stab.
Well, clapping on 1 and 3 is a very stereotypically white thing, and 2 and 4 is, you know, a groove thing. Is where groove comes from, and it's amazing that it is also culturally relevant when you go to Europe. You can cross a border, you can go from Switzerland to France, and they clap differently, and they respond differently. So there's something there. I do want to also say that James Brown, like we're all going to clap on 2 and 4 to James Brown, but to James Brown and to Prince, the 1 was the most important beat. You have to hit the 1 to hit the 2. It's all about the 1. And so there's that. Now, clapping to Love Supreme, you're talking about this drummer, Elvin Jones. And I just have a little quick story about Elvin Jones. I once went to see John Coltrane at the Half Note in New York, and the guy, the bouncer at the door said, well, I'm sorry, we're sold out. Well, wait a minute, there is 1 seat left at the end of the bar. You can have it if you want it. I said, please, anything, and they showed me to my seat. And at the Half Note, the stage was behind the bar. And so I'm sitting here, and Elvin Jones is right here, and I'm sitting right below his bass drum. And for an hour, it was like being in a thunderstorm. That literally is what it felt like. And it wasn't about 2 and 4 at all. It was just moving air, energy, life force. But, you know, Love Supreme itself, bo-da-do-dee, bo-do-dee. That's all you need to know about Love Supreme. Oh, Love Supreme, oh, Love Supreme.
We all feel it differently. Our brains are all different. Where you feel the beat, if you want the technical term, it's called the tactus. And you can't have the 2 without the 1.
Right.
But when we talk about swing, like
Yeah.
that, you know, Glenn Miller in The Mood. It's the 2 and the 4 that give it the swing.
But it's also the dotted eighth.
Yeah, that's right.
So
the long short.
Long short, and the dotted eighth is your heartbeat. Ba-boom, ba-boom,
Yeah.
ba-boom. I think, is there any evidence that we are designed to respond to the dotted eighth that way? I mean, swing, what we
It's
call
the first
swing.
thing you hear, the first sound you hear in
Right.
the womb.
It's in the womb.
Yeah,
So,
it's a womb with a view.
You look so happy when you do this.
You look so pained.
No, but this is interesting because there's a great difference between rhythm and meter.
Yeah.
Meter is the mechanical subdivision of passing events. It's a clock. It's a metronome. But rhythm can be the water at the shore. It can be your heartbeat, and they're very different. And there's the other thing, Dan, you were saying about where we feel the beat. It's possible for 3 people, and it's probably necessary for 3 people to feel it differently.
Right.
Everybody has a different way. And some people feel it on top, a little ahead.
Yep.
Some people feel it behind.
Sinatra famously sang behind the beat.
Right.
The Kenny Aronoff, the drummer,
Right.
famously plays a bit ahead of the beat. And if you want to hear the difference, go home and listen to John Fogerty's recent recordings from Creedence Clearwater Revival, the last 20 years, with Kenny Aronoff on the drums, versus these same songs, the originals, with Doug Clifford on the drums. Mm-hmm. Doug played behind the beat, very swampy. Kenny Aronoff is very much ahead of the beat. Same songs, completely different feel.
Right. And playing behind the beat is not slowing down. Some people think, oh, well, but you're slowing it. No, it's like if this is the center of the beat, playing on top of the beat is here, but parallel, and playing behind the beat is here, but parallel. So it's where you feel the
I think there's any truth to the idea of it being the New York sound versus the LA sound?
Well, that's been proposed, that the LA sound is laid back and the New York sound is aggressive.
In your face.
In your face.
Yeah. You talking to me?
Well, the people in LA deny that this is the case. that they feel they're misunderstood. Being from LA, do you have a feeling about that?
The LA Cats all play behind the beat.
They all play behind the beat. They do.
Yeah.
Well, okay. We're good. We're good. Anybody? Here we go. Oh, there's somebody back there too, Steve.
Meditation is another technique that has been proposed to solve all sorts of problems. So, given that for a lot of us, extra time is a scarce resource. Say a person has an hour a day. What would you say in this venue about whether that hour should be devoted to musical practice or meditation practice?
You can do both together.
Yay!
Richard Davidson, an eminent neuroscientist here from the university, says you can do both together. And he's right. But I mean, you've got to find what works for you. There is no one size fits all. And maybe maybe meditation will work for you for 6 months, and then you'll grow tired of it. It won't have the same effect, and you'll switch to music. Maybe you'll combine them both. Maybe you won't. Not everybody likes the same thing, and meditation some people find easier than others, and there are lots of different kinds of meditation. There are lots of different kinds of music.
I just would suggest, and this is my own craziness, listen to Miles Davis's Kind of Blue. That record never gets old. It always creates a particular space that's peaceful, that's human, and it's the most amazing. I mean, try it.
And I would add the Bill Evans Waltz for Debbie recordings. Yeah. The album.
Live at the Village.
Live at the Village Vanguard, yeah.
The Village Vanguard. Yeah, there are some records that you can listen to forever and they won't grow old.
Take 5.
Yeah, exactly.
That'll never get old. We've been focusing on adults, I think, primarily. And the 2 videos you showed of the people with being able to sing Happy Birthday but not say it absolutely amazes me. But I'm curious about little people, like little children. When I visit my own kids and their little ones need to go to bed, sometimes screaming their heads off, I like to go in, take them into their bedroom, shut the door, and I'll sing Norwegian to them. Now, they'll quiet right down. Now, are they shocked because of the language, or are they, what is the difference? I don't quite understand.
I don't think they're shocked because of the language. I mean, you could try an experiment, sing something in English, but I think for tens of thousands of years, mothers and fathers, caregivers have sung to infants to calm them, toddlers, young children to calm them. There's something very ancient about that connection. We don't really know what it is, but we do know that by the age of 20 weeks, the auditory system of the developing fetus is fully functional, and it imprints on the voice of the mother and the voice of the father, or 2 mothers, 2 fathers, I mean, the caregivers who are in the house. And if you're a family member, you've got some vocal qualities that are going to be reminiscent of or similar to those of their birth parents if you're a grandparent. So there's a very ancient and primal connection to the singing voice.
Another question? Here, Steve? Somebody here?
I'm not sure how to word this, but I'm thinking about the difference between singing something into being and writing it into being. And as a poet, I can wake up or be walking and be singing something, and the words will come and be really interesting. But sometimes I can just be, just hear a phrase of words in my head. They have to have some kind of pulse that creates some kind of impulse that creates the writing. And, you know, there's usually my best writing, I'm a poet, has some kind of rhythm behind it. but it's not the same as music. So I'm wondering about music versus writing in your life and your kind of writing practice as opposed to or as part of your musical practice.
Well, I'll lay out a framework and then I'll let Ben answer because he writes wonderful lyrics, poetic lyrics. And I would say there's two separate factors here. One is the process. When you are creating, are you writing it down in the moment of creation, or are you expressing it through speech and song? So there's that part of it. And then there's a question of, are song lyrics poetry? Even the very best song lyrics that you can separate from the melody, they weren't intended as poetry, generally speaking. It's a different art form. There can be some overlap in the Venn diagram. Bob Dylan did win the Nobel for Literature. But really, I think they serve different purposes, and in the creation of them, a difference is that the music has this driving tempo that gives it a narrative momentum that's different. Poetry has a tempo and a meter and all that, but music goes on whether you want it to or not. But for you created many more beautiful songs than...
Well, thank you. First, what comes to mind is something the comic Marty Mull said. He said, writing about music is like dancing about architecture. So I don't know if that's relevant. I find...
You seem so pleased with yourself.
Yeah, I did. I like that. I really like that. I find that there's a very close similarity for me between not just writing song lyrics, but writing an article or something, and playing piano. Not just writing a composition, but
or writing books.
Writing books, exactly right. It's a matter of listening for the voice, right? The voice tells you. There's a voice that we know as authentic, and you kind of glossed over the word authentic a half hour ago, but that's a very important and powerful word in this discussion. What is and what isn't authentic? Because when the authentic voice talks to you, then the music plays through you, then the words come to you, then you're taking dictation rather than trying to create something. And I always say that what I stumble on is invariably better than what I'm looking for. If it's something I'm looking for, I already think I know what it is. But if I stumble on it, then I'm surprised. And if I'm surprised, I'm learning something.
Yeah,
too.
so what Joni taught me about songwriting was, don't write about a song about some story in your life or some emotion that you figured out. Nobody cares about that. Find something you haven't figured out and discover it through the songwriting process.
That's beautiful. Right. Stumble upon it.
Yeah.
The differences in your brain.
We don't know. Are there differences?
When you're in that authentic voice and when you're in discovery mode, are there differences that have been
There are differences in the brain when you're in the discovery mode, and the biggest difference is there's a part of your brain up here, the prefrontal cortex, that's the inner critic. It's the school marm wagging her finger. It's the part of you saying, why the hell did you write that? That's terrible. Who do you think you are? You're never going to amount to anything. You have to turn that part off. And that's a very distinctive brain state.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And we're wrapping up here. I just want to say big thanks, Dan Levitin, for writing this book. It's really interesting and helpful, and I recommend it to all of you. And thank all of you for coming tonight. And you will be signing books.
I'll be signing books.
There will be books signed, I assume, right out there. Yeah, it's right out there.
And Ben's books are there too.
My books are there?
Ben is an incredible writer of books, articles, interviewed everybody who matters in music, and he's just an incredible, inspiring songwriter. In fact, I wrote a song in tribute to...
Yes, I heard it today. It's really funny. I liked it. Yeah. I liked it. Well, that's another thing I would love to have talked about, and that's humor in music and how music, instrumental music, can be funny. And I don't mean like barnyard sounds, but
Spike Jones.
not Spike Jones.
Yeah, yeah.
But how there's humor, there's grammar. We didn't talk about
Yeah.
grammar in
Yeah.
music. I mean, talked about.
I know what you mean. I played with a new bass player in Boston a month ago. Her name is Kira Moser, brand new faculty member at Berklee College of Music.
Huh.
We played that song, There Is Delight, together.
Yeah.
And she came up with the most beautiful bass line. I've played it with 20 different bass players. Her line was so beautiful, I just started laughing out loud. I
Yeah.
couldn't stop myself.
Yeah.
And I don't know where the laughter came from, but it's not that it was humorous, it was just so joyful and ebullient.
And I think that makes perfect sense that beauty and laughter are
Yeah.
are connected.
Yeah. Thank you, Ben Sidran.
Thank you, Dan Levitin. Thank you all.